Welcome to episode 8 of It's Personal, an Entrepreneur's Podcast. We're very, very excited today. We have Reggie Johns, the founder and CEO of local company bookthatcondo.com. He wears many other hats as well. Reggie, we're super happy to have you join us and appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you guys inviting me over.
Yeah. Reggie is one of those people that every time we get together, I leave with some new information. And is always very interesting to listen to, so I'm sure you guys are going to enjoy this. But really, I just want to start by asking you a little bit about, obviously it's called It's Personal Podcast. What's a little bit about your personal journey to getting to what you're doing now and what got you into that space? And kind of just that whole transcending to that point.
Sure. Yeah, I will tell you, I was the kid that grew up poor. We just didn't have a whole lot. Lived on a farm up in Washington County, and my dad had a 10th grade education and worked in construction. He was a trucker, and we lived very meager. We lived what we grew for the most part, and I just said at a young age, that's not what I want to do. I'm very proud of my dad because he's a blue collar hard worker, but I wanted more. I wanted to be able to travel. I wanted to be able to have more income. So as I was going through high school, I just one day decided I was going to join the military. So in the Army, you could join the reserves of the National Guard at 17. So I went to basic training between my junior and senior year. Oh, wow. Finished Army boot camp and then went back and finished my senior year. Then 3 days later, I was back at Fort Benning in Georgia to finish AIT. And during that time, I decided, hey, maybe I'll go to college. So I started in college. And I think the one thing when you look back, persistence, never giving up, continue to push forward. And so during that time, I continued into college, and after getting 3 years of college, the Army says, hey, you can go to officer candidate school before you graduate from college. So I went to OCS, and we started out with 103, graduated 24, and
wow.
I'll tell you, at the end of the first, there's 3 phases, and the first phase, I was second from last in the order of merit list. But I ended up graduating 8th because I worked really hard throughout that process. That's awesome. Of course, the TAC officers just stayed on me. They just stayed on me, and they tried to get me to quit, but I was like, I'm not going to quit. Going back to that word persistence, and pushing through and learning, for the most part, how to deal with stress, because they push you to the limit. They expect one day that you possibly could be on the battlefield leading troops, so they want to push you as far as they can to see how well you function. And so I finished officer candidate school and had a good career in the Army. I spent 14 years in the Army, and then one day I woke up and says, I don't want to do this anymore. And I was getting out and was going to go do something different, and then come to find out the Air Force had a green to blue program. So it took me a little while, but I transitioned. I was a captain at the time, and transitioned from the Air Force from the Army to the Air Force.
Okay.
So I tell people I woke up green, went to bed blue, and right after that, 9/11 hit. So when 9/11 hit, then all of a sudden we had people moving in different directions, and I was recalled to active duty at that time, and spent a good portion of my young career, because I had not been a captain very long, in the Air Force. And then in 2003 got a special duty assignment to Baghdad, working for the Coalition Provisional Authority. It was like a special duty assignment through the State Department, and they sent me over to set up a mass grave action plan. And got over there, hit the ground, and my boss was an attorney for the State Department. And she says, I got 42 staff members from 8 different countries going in different directions. I need a chief of staff. So you're my chief of staff. So originally, I guess I'll back up for a second. Originally, they sent me over to set up a mass grave action plan to repatriate all the bodies that Saddam had sent. So I wore 2 hats for a while there, setting up the mass grave action plan and managing, being the chief of staff, managing all the
How many
staff
people
members.
were you over, you think?
42 staff members from
Okay,
8
wow.
different countries in the Office of Human Rights and Transitional Justice. So it wasn't long after that that the Iraqi Governing Council announced the formation of the Ministry of Human Rights. So a lot of the things that we were doing in the Office of Human Rights and Transitional Justice, the two sides are human rights and then transitional justice, we were writing the statutes for the special tribunal. They announced the Ministry of Human Rights and says, okay, we've appointed a minister, now we need an advisor and a senior advisor. So my boss was the senior advisor, and my job was the deputy senior advisor to the Ministry of Human Rights. So we worked long hours, many days, almost nearly 7 days a week, consistently. It wasn't uncommon to be up north working with the Kurds and in the morning and be back in the office in the evening time there in Baghdad working, till 1, 2 o'clock and then going at it every day. But it was fun and I learned a lot. Her role pretty much was setting policy, going out, getting donors. My job was mostly the logistical side. So there wasn't a district in Baghdad that I didn't drive through looking for a place to house this new ministry. In the meantime, why we were positioned in the Coalition Provisional Headquarters, which is the Republican Palace, we put the Ministry of Human Rights in the Ministry of Oil. So we're on the south of Baghdad. The Ministry of Human Rights or Ministry of Oil is on the north side. So I made that trek through Baghdad
Many times.
many times, and I learned to not use coalition vehicles. My driver, who was just such an awesome guy, he was my translator also. His name was Saeed Betroni. He was a Lebanese. He went down to Basra and bought an old BMW, and we would drive around, and I would always say, Saeed, be back here at 0900 or whatever time. Said, run primary route, run 2 alternate routes, and then we'll leave, pick me up here at the palace. And that's what we did. We traveled. But it wasn't just that route. We were all over. But I worked with USAID, and they helped me get once we found a building, get a grant. Then I awarded a contract to oversaw the construction, the renovation of about a 54,000 square foot building. And from about October through February, construction pretty much went on every day.
Non-stop, yeah.
And
And you kind of oversaw that to a degree.
I oversaw all the construction side of that. So during that time, I said, you know what? I kind of really enjoyed doing this work.
Yeah.
Not just the construction side, but we built that ministry from the ground level up. I wrote a $25 million budget for the ministry.
Wow.
Pulled a lot of our programs over, and then oversaw the moving the minister in. I just got so many stories I could tell you guys, but it included setting up Jersey barriers around, buying weapons. I bought, I think it was 29 AK-47s from Jordan in a box. I paid $79 a piece. They're brand new, never been fired.
That's
just
crazy.
for the minister's detail. Just some of the little tidbits. But spent 7 months of just to the wall every day, pushing it. And had a young family at the time, so after the inauguration, my boss left, and I spent the next 2 weeks working with the British Foreign Service Office to do a relief in place where the things that we were doing, we were handing over to the
them.
Brits. So I can tell you the day I left was February 29th, leap year day, and I worked all night, nonstop, trying to get all the programs, sitting in my office, get everything turned over. Got up, I didn't never even sleep. I didn't sleep for 2 days, just trying to get all this work done. Went back to my room, was trying to pack everything up, and I realized I didn't have enough Foot Locker for all my stuff, so I gave a bunch of my stuff to my roommates, and then I went over to the PX, got another Foot Locker, loaded up, jumped on an armored convoy, went to Baghdad International on the back side, and we sat there and waited forever.
Hurry up and wait.
Hurry up and wait. Well, that was about, I'd probably say about 10 o'clock. Well, the aircraft was supposed to pick us up at 1300. Come to find out it was broken. So they were trying to fix it. And then 3 o'clock comes around. They said, we still don't have an aircraft. Well, by 5, they said, we'll bring a new aircraft in from Basra. So they brought a C-130 in, and the aircraft came in, and it's dusk. And if you know anything about being in combat arms, the stand to, stand down is the most probable time for the enemy to attack. So he comes in, and C-130 does a corkscrew over. It comes down, and we're all in a Ranger file formation, and aircraft never stop. Hit the FLS, drop the hatch. We shuffle out, jump on. Front end later drops our gear, pulls out. We pull off the FLS, hatch goes up, we corkscrew up. By the time we hit a platform, I'm watching the 2 loadmasters. They're both hooked up, looking out the portholes. They're looking out, and all of a sudden, we start doing these evasive measures. Aircraft brakes. These 2 guys do backflips, fall on their back. I'm watching the flares activate. We're doing a hard bank, and I feel like the aircraft's about to crash.
Holy moly.
Broke in half. Anyway, so SAM goes by us, surface-to-air missile. They lay the aircraft back open. We're moving about 30 seconds. These guys are back up, looking, same thing. Back pivot fall, aircraft banks, flares activate, another one comes at us. Man, I'm praying now.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. So anyway, lay it back over. I fly down to Kuwait, and a week later I was able to come back home. So when I came back home, I said I'm going to do something different. So I went into the Air Force Reserves and decided to get my real estate license. A friend of mine in Destin, he was a retired colonel. He was kind of a mentor when I was on active duty. He says, Panama City Beach, this is 2004 now. Panama City Beach is booming. Get your real estate license and get over there and start working for a developer. Oh, well, the company he worked for never hired me. So I got in my car and I drove up and down Panama City Beach, and I stopped by an office at the Lake Town Wharf. And so happened the broker was there that day, hired me on the spot. From that day forward.
Was there really anything other than just that advice that made you want to do real estate in specific, you would say?
You know, I had the philosophy, the harder you work, the more money you can make. And being in sales was one of the things I wanted to do. But I also wanted to learn, how do you build high-rise condos? So there was kind of a twofold situation.
Makes sense.
And I did. And I worked there nearly every day, with the exception of going to church on Sundays.
When Lake Town was built, that one was... It was pretty big time at that time around here.
$210 million project, 765 units, and over 200,000 commercial space. So I was there every day, and I got to know the builder, the project manager, and so anytime they would bring the bank in, I would give them a real estate report, and so they had the confidence. Well, the market did really good until Hurricane Katrina hit in August 29th, 2005. And it was just like you went to a faucet and
just
turned it off, and it just started trickling. Real estate sales just started. Now, in other parts of the country, people were saying, well, 2007, 2008, in Panama City Beach, there was so much inventory. You're talking about over 10,000 new condos being built. And the people that were buying are flippers. So guess what? They put this 20% down, and they decided, hey, it's in my best interest to try to get out of my contract, or I'm walking. So, of all the units that I sold in the Lake Town Wharf, not one, 2 years later, closed. And I will tell you that that was it was a learning point for me, because during that time, I sat my investments. I was taking signature loans. I took a HELOC on my house, just to sustain for that 1.5 to 2 years until these properties would close.
What you were seeing on the other side.
Yeah, because I had over 50 properties under contract in the Lake Town, and then I had over 150 on one end of Biloxi that we were building.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Lake Town Wharf, there's no shores yet, right?
There's no shores yet. Now,
coming
while I was
soon,
at the Lake Town,
but
Lake Town and the shores came up around
kind of the same.
time.
But then the bank got, the FDIC or the government ended up doing something with shores,
both
right?
of them.
They got Lake Town too.
Horse Bank was the primary lender, and the I can't remember what year, but 2007,
Yeah,
2008, of course, Bank took over, and then of course it wasn't long that the FDIC
Took
over
both,
Course
yeah.
Bank.
So you essentially had like 200 contracts
200
that
contracts.
didn't turn into.
Yeah.
Did any of them close?
Not one.
Not one.
So
Man.
it was a lesson learned for me.
Wow.
That, like,
Yeah.
in the future, don't look at just one source of revenue. So during that time,
That's crazy.
I went to work for another broker in hopes that some of that will close. I had a chance to, at that time in the reserves, I had gotten promoted. I was working at the Air Combat Command at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. Had a chance to go to Afghanistan and on a really sweet assignment that I was going through interrogator training and been interrogated. But decided to stay the course in real estate. And during that time, I spawned this idea of setting up my own vacation rental management company. And that's where Book That Condo was spawned.
What do you think kind of like gave you that idea initially?
With my experience of when I was on active duty in the Air Force, I managed lodging.
Okay.
Which has a little has some of the same alignment. In Baghdad, building the Ministry of Human Rights, so building something from the ground level
Startup.
taking that experience. And then when I was at Langley Air Force Base, I was the command lodging officer. So I had 14 bases that I managed. So taking that experience with the education that I
kind of had already done like lodging logistics to a point.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I decided I was going to do something. I wanted to build an unconventional business model, I wanted to get into vacation rentals, and I figured I could build inventory quicker than other companies by going with a flat fee model versus commission. Now, years later, I changed because I realized there's more money in the commission base.
Yeah,
sure.
But I used VRBO. No one during that time was using VRBO.
Then, yeah.
They had a rotation system. They were using print ads. Had a database of people who had stayed with them before. So for me, using VRBO, I could start marketing properties individually, whereas they would use a rotation system and they would only market.
So
specific floor
VRBO,
plans.
when it started, was it not like a website booking platform?
It was.
It was more like an inbound call.
No, it was a website.
Okay.
It was a website, and you gained placement based on the number of photos that you bought. If you bought up to 24 photos, that gave you the highest placement.
Really?
And through the years, they evolved, and they went into this different tiered system where you could buy. You
Interesting.
start out as a bronze, and you can go all the way up
Tier
to platinum.
up or-
Then they started working using this thing called an algorithm. An
Yeah.
algorithm changed a lot. Now it's all about placement. There's 24 characters that you have in their algorithm, and as a property manager, that's what we make our
Try to
adjustments
hit.
to.
Yeah.
We're constantly measuring those to try to maximize our exposure for every
Makes
property.
sense. Okay.
So anyway, so I started Book That Condo. I did express check-in, express check-out. I would sit there in office at this resort, and I would watch people stand for hours
Trying to get a key. And
snaking through, trying to get a card key. And I said, you know what? If I can simplify this process, I'm going to make it a lot easier. Well, if you look at what's going on today, most companies are using express check-in, express check-out.
So that goes back to right before we started on air today with the kiosk at the airport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that kind of correlates to that same thing.
Yeah. Literally, it's just finding ways to cut out like that extra little
That
step.
time.
inconvenient of I'm on vacation. I don't want to spend the first hour and a half of my vacation
Waiting in a
standing
line
in
for
line
a
to
ticket
get
or
a
a key or
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, simplifying processes is so critical because when a family comes on vacation, they're doing two things. They come to make memories, and they also escape the rigors of life.
turn off.
Turn it off,
Yeah.
come down here, and as a property manager and vacation rental manager, it's our job to get it right. I had an all-staff meeting yesterday with my staff.
Yeah.
And I hammered that home, that it's our job to get it right the first time. If there's a problem, let's minimize it, fix it quickly. Let's don't sit back and try to get into this analysis by paralysis by
Just deal with
analysis. And get it done. And when you put a customer go with a customer first approach, and everybody buys into that, then you really start to see the effectiveness of your company.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So through the years, we evolved. I think we've gone through 4 We've gone through 4 websites that we have built because our industry is constantly evolving. 3 property management software systems because we're always wanting to be at the cutting edge. One of the things I will say, I make a lot of investment in my employees. When I built this company, I wanted to be employee centric, and I keep hammering that home as well. So I spend several thousands a year sending my staff out to conferences. I want them to network with industry professionals. I want them to feel this as a little mini vacation, and I want them to get educated on the newest trends of the market.
Yeah.
Then bring that back
To the office.
and when we have our next staff meeting, explain and help everybody understand. So now we're bringing new ideas to the table, and we're constantly evolving as a company so that we can be at the cutting edge and be the company that is known in Panama City Beach.
Absolutely.
Oftentimes I feel like, empowering people to come up with like kind of their own opinion helps everyone evolve, helps the company evolve. Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
I continue to emphasize the word employee centric. When you make it about the employees, you don't necessarily have to worry about profit because the production will bring you that profit.
Yeah.
And retention is another good thing. You know, one of the things I did last year was I brought on a healthcare insurance program for my staff because my goal was I wanted my lowest paid employee to be able to afford
it.
Live
insurance.
life, yeah.
Yeah, so that they don't have that stress, and that they look at working at Book That Condo as a profession, not just coming to do
A transition to whatever I'm going to do next.
Absolutely, and I want them to grow because building on organizational history. That employee was with me last year and the year before. We take those lessons learned and we move forward with that so that we're not having high turnover. When you have high turnover, you lose that organizational history and you start all over again.
Yeah, and turnover costs a lot of money too.
And it costs money, and so investing in employees. Some of the things that we do. I bring a chef in on Thursdays.
Yeah.
And the chef cooks for my entire staff.
That's pretty cool.
And the reason we do that is in our building, if you've been there before, you've got the call center on the front, all the admins on the front. In the back, you have the operations, which is maintenance, housekeeping, floor cleaning. The front of the house didn't really talk to the back of the house because they're doing different jobs.
businesses.
But
Yeah.
now I can bring everybody to the cafe. We sit there, we break bread. They get to know each other on a personal level.
Yeah.
So now you build that fabric.
And they're willing to
of that
communicate
team.
about that
What's
missing.
Absolutely.
It makes it easier for Susan up front to call John on the back and say,
That's
"Hey,
correct.
just got this.
Yeah.
I need you to, this, and that."
Exactly.
So we have built some major dividends off of just simple things like that. Last week we did family bowling. It's important for me not just to focus on the employee, but focus on their families.
Yeah.
Bring the families in, give the kids their lane, the employees. Then we go through a game or two of bowling, and then we give out awards. In the meantime, we feed them, and it is just the camaraderie that's built.
It's fulfilling too to be a part of
Absolutely.
creating something like that. I think.
Absolutely.
It's like
You
Dave-
build a family.
It's like
not-
Dave last time, he said, and I've this one for whatever reason has resonated with me. He said, find resources for the humans in your office. Don't make the humans the resources.
That's right. Yeah.
And that sat with me for a while. And you've explained that in the last 5 minutes is you want to find ways to make them comfortable so they can express themselves personally and professionally.
Right.
To get a better output for your business.
That's correct. And it just starts with a mission statement.
Yeah.
What is the mission of our company? I want everyone to buy into what is their mission. Then what is my vision as the owner of the company? Where do we want to be next week? Where do we want to be next month? Where do we want to be next year? Where do we want to be in 5 years? So it's my job to convey that to the staff by setting that vision. And then your core values. Who are you? What shapes the culture of your company with your core values? And one of the things that I do is I carry around gift cards, Starbucks gift cards, just something simple. Walk through the hall, stop an employee. Hey, what are our 7 core values? They know that I've got these gift cards.
Smart,
it's amazing what they learn through learning the mission, learning the vision, learning the core values.
Well, I mean, life is a lot about mindset. I truly believe that. Like what you good or bad, what you think about the most and what you put into your head, even opinions about yourself or others, is pretty much projected out into the world through your attitude and how you live life. And so even just making a fun game like that makes an employee think about those core values certainly transcends in them interacting them out throughout the day with customers.
Does.
Yeah.
It's the little things, just the recognition. We have a young maintenance tech that works for us. He's 18 years old, or just turned 19. And we got, when the reservations got a call, she was calling to follow up on a work order. A guest had a concern, and the guest just talked about this kid Cole, about how wonderful he was, and how he would, before he left, he wanted to make sure if everything was good for them. Well, by they taking that and conveying it to the reservationists shooting an email out to all the managers about, hey, look what Cole did.
Look at Cole, yeah.
So I took that screenshot and sent it to his mom last night.
Yeah.
Now, what did that just do? Not we're just praising Cole, but taking that to his family. Do you think he was excited about coming to work
The
today?
gratitude.
Yeah,
about
100%.
that,
Just
yeah.
something. His mom was one of my original staff members. She was one that helped me when I first started the company.
Yeah.
Wow.
And now her son,
That's pretty cool.
13 years later, is working for us, and he's just a little shining star.
Yeah.
And just that little bit of gratitude,
Absolutely.
goes
such a long way.
It does, So
How many properties do you guys manage now?
we have a little over 200 properties in all.
Okay.
And from the Book That Condo side, and then I also own Dunn Realty, which is a long-term property management company. We have about 150 there. In addition, I own Portfolio Real Estate Management Group, and that's a real estate brokerage that we focus on the investment property sales more so than just the bread and butter. I think investment property.
Yeah, and does most of the brokerage's business come from property management, would you say?
It does. And the concept was a spoken hub concept,
Yep.
where Book That Condo is kind of like the biggest economic generator, but you have other properties that
It's kinda like you don't have
other
to-
businesses that help mutually support.
Yeah.
You don't have to turn away opportunity necessarily.
That's right.
Yeah.
And last year we started our own floor cleaning company.
Oh, okay.
because,
That makes sense.
Hey, these units. Well, I started looking at the number of invoices I was sending out. We still use other companies. I try to spread the wealth, but we were sending all this, looking at these invoices of what we're paying out. And I'm like, why would I not want to bring that in house? It helps for two reasons. Number one, it's a revenue generator, but number two, it helps me schedule these in a timely manner
And have control over it.
having control. But like on Saturdays when you have a big turn day, I never know when I'm going to be able to get a floor cleaner in from one of our vendors. But having control of it, we can schedule it.
That makes sense.
Ahead of time.
What about
There's a benefit
laundry?
to
I
it.
imagine laundry is kind of like a similar situation, right? Because that's got to be a
laundry,
high invoice item, linens, towels.
It is, and we've been with the same laundry company for several years, so I've been able to try to balance that. But we do some laundry in house, but for the linens and the terries, we outsource that.
Yeah.
My long-term goal is to build our own laundry facility. Probably when we hit our 300 units, then I'll start looking at it. Our facility is set up to have industrial
infrastructure put
laundry
in for that.
facilities. But it will probably end up being another building just because we've outgrown our space.
Already, yeah.
We have an 8,000 square foot building, and we've pretty much already outgrown it because of
And
our
you
growth.
just renovated that basically 2 years ago.
Two
Yeah.
years ago, we moved into it, and it was.
I
We
guess that's a
started in
good
a strip
problem to
mall.
have.
Yeah, I'll just tell you that when going back to the evolution of Book That Condo, I will tell you that I was working on this real estate company, and when the BP oil spill hit,
Yeah.
everything dried up. Now, we had just come out of the drought. 2009 was good. 2010 was doing real well. So I'd made a good rebound in the real estate sales. Meanwhile, I'd already started Book That Condo, but we were kind of more in a test phase. So when the BP oil spill hit, everything dried up. And I had some really good contracts. And I was like, man, what am I going to do now? So a friend of mine who he and his partner had started these HAZWOPER schools, or these schools to train these HAZWOPERs to get them certified so they can go out on the beaches and work for BP and some of the construction or contractors they have. So they came to me and said, "Hey, you're military, right?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, we need instructors.
Huh.
We got these schools and we've got plenty of students, but we just don't have enough instructors." Said, I said, "Well, I can teach most anything if I can learn the subject matter. So I looked through their course guide and I was like, I can teach this." I said, "Let's do this." I said, let me go to class for 2 weeks and I'll teach on the third week." And they said, "Great." So we'll pay you $1,000 a day if you would teach. I was like, wow, that's pretty awesome. So went through the school the first week and said, "You know what? I don't need to go the second week. I can teach this now." Yeah. So the second week, one of my closest friends, she's like another mama to me, Miss Kathy Barr, took me around. It was at the BP Hub where the classroom was, and she took me around and introduced me to all the managers that BP had sent down here. And by the end of the second week, I had the contract to house BP. So anybody that they were bringing into Panama City Beach, even down to Destin, I would set them up for their lodging while they're here. Well, in the meantime,
basically in one of the ones you were managing.
Well, I didn't have but a few at that time.
Yeah.
So yes, I think I had 3 units at the time. So this was in the middle of the summer. Panama City Beach, there's nobody here. Yeah. The media had really,
scared everyone away.
Kept everybody away. So I went up and down the beach asking these resorts, "Can you give me 15 units? Can you give me 20 units?" And my job was pretty much sitting in my house, coordinating, getting people in, getting them out. They did all the cleaning, and I built an override. So I was, I was making a lot of money.
You're raking it, yeah. That's
raking
crazy.
So that gave me the seed money really to book that condo to another level. Mm-hmm. So we got an office, and I hired a small staff, and we just kind of started it from there.
Yeah.
And then today we employ full-timers. We probably have about 35 employees, and then contractors. It's anywhere during the season we hire up to 80.
Okay. Yeah. Contractors.
What do you
cleaners and stuff?
And maintenance vendors.
What do you consider season?
I consider, our season, Panama City Beach is a seasonal resort market.
Yeah.
So it goes in cycles. So you have, right now, we really deal with 3 major income producing seasons.
Okay.
That is spring, summer, and fall. Used to fall after Labor Day. We didn't have a lot of activity, but when a lot of these schools went to a modified school schedule, we started seeing a lot of schools from Kentucky and Tennessee coming down, and they would stay and
they get those long weekends now in like October.
Long weekends.
Yeah.
Well, they'll take a whole week off, and usually it's around Columbus Day weekend.
Mm-hmm. They take advantage of whatever that Friday, Monday vacation day is.
That's correct. But some of them will stay 7
days. Just go ahead and keep it.
Right. So we get about 6 good weeks of spring break. It starts the first to second week of March, and it goes to wherever Easter falls. Mm-hmm. This year Easter's early, so we'll pick up an extra week. And then we go into what is called the shoulder season. And that's usually from where Easter falls, about the first or second weekend of April to about mid-May.
Memorial Day.
And the slow summer season starts about May 15th.
Okay.
And goes up to about the second week of June. Now, when the Gulf Coast Jam came in, now we're seeing a shift where first week was always slow. Gulf Coast Jam has picked up and helped cover that. So gap. That is actually becoming in high demand. So we can say that would be a high summer week. But your biggest summer weeks is usually the second or third week of June to the third week of July. That is peak.
Yeah, that month and whatever.
That 5 to 6 week period.
That is, there. And then you see it taper off a little bit.
I actually think at my short-term rental, my single unit, I think I probably do close to 45% of my revenue in those 6 weeks. I was just calculating it yesterday.
It stays real busy, and then it starts to taper off, and then you get to the second weekend of August, and then it just falls off.
Yeah.
You'll see a lot of weekenders that come in, or people that don't want to be around a lot of
people,
other people. They'll come in during that time, and it will stay pretty stagnant until you get to Labor Day. We have a good Labor Day weekend, and then people that come down here are much like those who come in middle of August. They just want to come to the beach. It's still warm, but they don't want to be around a lot of people. And then fall break for Georgia normally starts about the last week of September.
Okay.
Then first 2 weeks of October is when when Kentucky, Tennessee, and Ohio, and you'll see a lot of those that come down.
So talking more about like just like the nitty gritty of like short-term rentals, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to listen to this that are going to be looking for like information in that regard. Like what are the, if someone, obviously what you're doing is on like a pretty big scale, right?
That's correct.
But for someone who wants to get into short-term rentals or even short-term rental management, like what are like the number one things that you feel like they should be aware of, or like nuances or things that people who are just getting into it just completely aren't aware of that you would give
Well,
them?
I will say this: it is a loosely regulated industry, so anyone can get in. And my philosophy is our market is so big that everybody can have a piece of the pie if they want to get in. They want to be an entrepreneur. I will tell you, there's a number of new companies that I have helped get off the ground, just as kind of a quasi consultant, to give them the lessons learned that we took through the years.
Sure, save them a couple of them. Yeah.
But I tell you what, there are some consultants that are out there that are in my industry that have worked for other companies, or they've worked in the tech industry, that pretty much this is all they do now is they help new startups. That would be my first recommendation, is contacting one of them and seeing how they could help them construct their new company so that they don't go through, for us,
All
there's
those
a lot of
lessons that are hard learned. We were just
in
kind of
life.
talking about that this morning, even just with like, honestly, just like regular real estate or all the development stuff we're trying to do is, unfortunately, the only real way to start doing anything really worth doing, no matter how much you educate yourself or like look into it, is to start doing it. And you certainly make a lot of mistakes along the way.
I will tell you, I spent about a year and a half just working on the business plan, studying other markets, and seeing what they do, and try to take the best little nugget out of every company and assemble that together.
Yeah.
That is something I would tell people. You start with a website. Obviously you have to get licensed through the state, through DVPR, register it with the Division of Hotels and Restaurants, not the Division of Real Estate, because though we have operating a trust account, we're not governed by the Division of Real Estate, where you have to have an escrow account.
Okay.
And they
scrutinize.
here in real estate school, you hear you have a negative balance, you can have your license revoked. Whereas in our case, you have an operating account, you have a trust account, but you can, a lot of times in the off season, you'll see, we did as a young company, we would have to dip into our trust in the off season to help float the operating through the season. Now I don't have that. I build contingency fund, and I say I'll never do that again, because that just gives us security from the company side. Yeah,
it doesn't help you sleep at night.
It does not help you sleep at night. You know that your revenue, you're just kind of teetering along with your revenue. But as you grow, that is one thing I will say. It is so important, is to build you a good contingency fund. And I'll tell you, here's a little nugget. When COVID hit, all my competition, one of the largest company here, furloughed all their employees. They had 995 properties.
Yep.
They furloughed all their employees. Because I had built a contingency fund, I put a couple $100,000 into a fund that just let it sit there. I brought all my employees in to the office, put them in a circle in the parking lot, and said, guys, I got good news for you. We got enough money to continue to operate. I'm not going to cut one position. I'm not going to cut 1 hour. So go home, tell your family we're going to keep working, and everything's going to be okay. Well, thankfully, the government, brought the PPP in and shored us up. But
you didn't know that
taking care
at
of
the
your
time.
employees, looking out for your people because you treat them like family, it goes a long ways. Mm-hmm. Whereas these other people that are sitting out there filing for unemployment, not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow, I really felt for them. Now, so those are just some of the things that having a contingency fund, sitting in that little nest egg back, will certainly help.
And listen, at COVID time, I had my real estate license and was like kind of part-time selling real estate, but I was still working my corporate management job when it first came. And I mean, I kind of ended up being one of those people to a degree. And it's one of the reasons I don't think I would ever go back to doing that. But truly and honestly, like they had us do a ton of stuff remote. They had us handle all kinds of stuff. I worked like grueling hours, and then when all of those tasks were done, like the very next day, they got us on a call and we're like, all right, we're not paying you anymore. And it was like one of the most brutal experiences I've ever had in my life.
It is. And because what are you thinking? I got a house payment.
Yeah.
I got a family I got to feed. And how am I going to manage this?
Yeah, I felt used, and I was just like very frustrated by the situation.
Well, and in hindsight, in your business, COVID probably ultimately in those couple of years ended up being good for you in our area.
Became really good.
Yeah.
Number one, I didn't have other companies poaching my employees. I was able to. And those companies that were shutting down,
you probably absorbed some of their business.
I took some of their business because we started writing letters.
Hey, we're still here.
Hey, we're still operating. And I'll tell you something else that we did.
And we're open and booming.
My employees, let's just take a reservations that wasn't answering the phone because we really didn't have a lot of business going on at that time. I could put them in the field, and we would put them in our properties, and we would take these properties to another level. Owners weren't making money, but wherever we could do, it had the best return on investment to make that rental better for
downtime is an opportunity to do something that you normally can't do when business is booming. You have to just look for those.
Because you know it's going to come back.
We kept everybody gainfully employed. They we shifted them to different positions.
Smart.
But and something else, they learned more about the business.
About this side of that
reservations don't typically get in these properties. Well, guess what? Now they can tell that guest that has a question about that property. Yeah, I remember I was in that condo, and let me tell you a little bit about it.
Check this out, yeah.
So there was just so many benefits of what occurred when COVID hit. From a company perspective.
So gonna wrap up with like one final question that we like to ask everyone. If you had one piece of advice, like personal or professional, it can be a combination of the two, but just like one thing that you would want to leave with people who are listening to this, like the most impactful, I almost call it a legacy piece of advice that you would want to give. What do you think that thing you would want to leave people with is?
Well, if I can look back through the few years that I've been on this earth, I would say using that one word that I started with, and that's persistence. Because a lot of my friends were out partying when I was working. And I knew that if I stayed the course, one day this thing would break open. Because no matter the experience that I gained, whether it was in the military or in the corporate world, being an entrepreneur, being persistent and taking lessons learned and growing from those, it has enabled me to reach the success I've had today. So, I'd like to continue to coin that word, just persistency.
Yeah, I can't agree with that enough. In fact, the word, it's a similar word, but the word I always talk about here is tenacity.
Tenacity. That's
the name of my LLC is Tenacity Projects.
Yep.
And trust me, we've had our fair share of that conversation too. We've done plenty of things that haven't worked out. So,
but you keep going.
Yeah.
You continue to go. This avenue might not work back up and adjust fire and go to this avenue. It might not. But if you continue to push forward, you're going to start seeing doors open.
Yeah.
Because every time you run into a roadblock, you've learned something along the way.
Agreed.
Agree.
Well, Reggie, I really appreciate you
Thank
taking
you,
the
guys.
time to come on. This was super fun and insightful as always. So that's episode 8 of It's Personal and Entrepreneurs Podcast. We're going to have Joe Courtney from Wild Marketing on next. So we hope you guys tune in to listen to that episode as well. Again, Reggie, appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Reggie.
I do appreciate that.